Hello, I'm Great Earth. My name is Dan. I hope you're doing well today. Got a bit to get into today. Nothing major, just a climate talk. Working there.
Ron has time are working to repair the damage. In northern Ukraine, drone attacks. Crews are working to repair the damage, according to Ukrainian officials. The drone attacks are part of Russia's strategy to target key infrastructure. Some new hope for a possible ceasefire in Gaza. The Associated Press reports has initially signed off on a fire.
Airstrike leaves 100,000 without power in Ukraine 13 hours ago by Vitaly Shevchenko and Tom MacArthur, BBC. A Russian attack on a power facility in Ukraine has left 100,000 people without power in the northwestern region of Sumy. Work is underway to get a So this is Ukraine. This is all of Ukraine here. Say Sumy, we mean this area in the center north of Ukraine. Russia fires over the lines. This is the region they're referring to. There are no reports of casualties or damage apart from the energy facility, Reuters reports. Russia continues to pummel energy infrastructure across Ukraine, often plunging the country into extended blackouts, with people enduring sweltering summer conditions without running water, air conditioning, or life-saving medical equipment. Over the past 3 months alone, Ukraine has lost 9 gigawatts of generating capacity, the national energy company Ukrenergo says, losing all of its thermal power plants to enemy action, seeing all hydraulic sites damaged by drones or missile strikes. This is enough to power the whole of the Netherlands during peak hours of consumption, and more than a third of the energy capacity Ukraine had before Russia's full-scale invasion began in February 2022, according to the national grid operator. Russia also tried to reroute some lanes, their power plants, back to Russia. I don't know if they were successful or not. This is insane. Poland has been diverting surplus electricity to Ukraine to help it cope with the Russian strikes. But Ukrenergo has scheduled cutoffs of electricity throughout the day across the country, as domestic generation and electricity import could not cover the deficit. Maria Subterian from Ukrenergo told the BBC she is aware that a lot of anger is directed at her for cutting electricity so often, for so long, and for so many customers, but she says there's no other option. We are at war. The energy sector is one of the goals for the Russian terrorists, and it is obvious why. All of our life, all of our civilization is built on electricity, she says. This is the price we pay for freedom. Meanwhile, Ukrainian air defenses shot down 24 to 27 Shahed kamikaze drones Russia launched on the night of July 5th through 6th. The Air Force Command had reported on Telegram. The drones were intercepted over areas including the Sumy region using electronic jamming and anti-air defenses, it said. The large amount of people that plunged into the dark. Just a couple of notable wildfires. This lake fire explodes in Santa Barbara County mountains. Western edge is a mile from former Netherland Ranch. A wildfire burning in a rugged area of Santa Barbara County exploded to more than 12,000 acres in its first day. The lake fire was reported around 4 p.m. Friday, July 5th near Zaca Lake in Los Padres National Forest. By about midnight, it had burned 4,673 acres, and at 1 p.m. Saturday, it was at 12,227 acres, over 19 square miles, said the U.S. Forest Service Fire Management Team. It's already California's fifth biggest fire of the season. As of Saturday afternoon, no evacuations had been ordered in the sparsely populated area, but prepare-to-go warnings were issued for an area between Zaca Lake and Los Alamos. The fire's western edge was within a mile of the former Michael Jackson Netherland Ranch, as well as several prominent wineries in the Foxen Canyon area. The map above shows the approximate perimeter as a black line. For details of evacuation warnings and latest updates, see Santa Barbara County's emergency map. The fire's cause is under investigation. There's Neverland Gates right here. Fire is very close to it. Perimeter is pretty massive. Fire is 12,000 acres was not something to blink at, like, oh, 12,000 acres. This is 12,227 acres. That is an explosion of activity, of fire activity. Evacuations ordered as New California wildfire ignites in scorching heat. Which wildfire is this? Okay, so this is the French fire. We're just looking at the lake fire, Zaca Lake. This is the French fire in Mariposa County. 0% contained by Friday morning. Meteorologists warned earlier this week that the holiday period could be hit by a dual threat of dangerously high heat and wildfires. Scorching temperatures on the 4th of July fuels wildfires in California that have burned through the night, as warnings from meteorologists that the holiday period could be hit by dangerously high heat came to pass. With much of the country in the grip of a heat wave that is set to break daily temperature records and make conditions dangerously hot during the holiday weekend, a large and uncontained blaze near Yosemite National Park has triggered evacuations and forced hospital patients to shelter in place. French fire in Mariposa County, California began Thursday and was 0% contained by Friday morning, having burned through 791 acres. Almost the entire town of Mariposa was under a mandatory evacuation order.
Mariposa.
Okay, Mariposa. Unless there's a local name or local way to say it that I'm not picking up or seeing, Mariposa. In a video posted to her Facebook page, Regina Lewis said the entire mountain above the high school is on fire in the town of Mariposa and had reached a largely residential street. Other footage taken in the area and posted to social media shows the sky illuminated bright orange by huge flames amid enormous clouds of smoke. Another video showed a plane dropping fire retardant over a forested area near Mariposa on Thursday. Almost 3,500 energy customers were without power Friday morning in Mariposa County, according to PowerOutage.us website. In Northern California, the much larger Thompson fire continues in Butte County, where it has has burned through almost 3,800 acres and is 46% contained as of Friday morning. The fire broke out Tuesday in Oroville, that's Lake Oroville, 65 miles north of Sacramento, and forced thousands of people to evacuate, although the vast majority of the 17,000 people were under evacuation orders or warnings were able to go home Thursday, said Christy Elio, public information officer for Butte County. Lynette Bailey told NBC News on Thursday that she had to scramble to get her 90-year-old father safely to a nearby shelter. It was panic because my dad didn't want to leave, and I told him, "You got to get in the car right now." That fire. Lake Oroville. Firestorm. When it settles in, it just takes over everything. Nothing prospers under smoke. But because there are no shelter places left for her dog, Bailey spent the last 2 days outside in the heat. It's really sad. I'm out here in this 108-degree degrees. I'm more worried about my dad, she said. Many 4th of July celebrations were canceled across California on Thursday as temperatures soared past the 100-degree mark, while places reached 110. With these temperatures in California, 107, 115 Lancaster, 107, 113. Get closer to the Arizona border is where they start trading a lot of hundreds. Central California isn't seeing the hundreds. In Northern California sees some hundreds, but also some 111s. A lot of triple-digit temperatures. I haven't seen temperatures like this before. Because when we say we haven't seen temperatures like this before, we don't mean that we've never seen this city at this temperature before. That's wrong. What we're saying here is we haven't seen sweeping, ridiculous temperature changes that happen across the country at alarming rates. This hurricane was the fastest tracked hurricane category 5 ever of all time, and it's still there. It started by Brazil, and it's just now entering landfall in Texas. And it's bad because, you know, it wasn't originally projected to be going this far north. And what lingers out of the storm is going to become a pretty substantial tropical storm as it goes across the country. Here's the storm down here. Still a low pressure system going across the country. And it looks like it crosses through the Midwest into Lake Erie. Crosses Lake Erie, where it's going to go northeast. And just expect a lot of rain in that low pressure system. This thing is going to, this Hurricane Beryl is going to reach Category 1 right before landfall. It's going to zip in, and then it's going to all the way up here. It is quite a journey, especially considering that This hurricane has gone already. You tell me that climate change is not real, but I beg to differ. We should be worried, but we're not. We're not going to be worried until there's a reason to be worried, right? Even though there's been reasons to worry, many reasons to worry. There's nothing I have to prove to people, as the evidence and the facts become their own. I'm not challenging people. I am insisting that what we are seeing is climate change. We haven't begun to see the problems it's going to involve. Milder winters, more precipitation, less frozen precipitation, more of it falling as water. This ruins freshwater supplies that rely on mountains as a freshwater source of water. This is much bigger than I could possibly describe. It's why I try to have this encompassing collective reporting on climate change. It is not just doom and gloom. It is not just fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We're not talking about projections. We're not talking about predictions. What we're talking about is usually happening at the moment, at the present. We try not to get too much into the future because it's murky and muddy. It's not always clear-cut, and I don't want people to think that I'm being looked at for predictions. Do not look at people for predictions right now because the weather is becoming harder to predict. The only prediction is that the temperatures are increasing across the board. It's almost like a heartbeat. Let's see here. The heartbeat. Now, what happens is, now you can see this little hurricane right here. That's the trail it goes. So it's going to go over Detroit. Detroit's going to have a ton of rain because this is going to go over water and it's just going to unzip. This is going to cause localized flooding all the way north from Texas here all the way northeast to the Midwest. It's a complicated storm and it's not done yet just because it hit Texas. Landfall is death for a hurricane. It becomes a Category 1 hurricane right before landfall 2. So its conditions are still going to be higher than intended if it was predicted to be a tropical storm. In my experience looking at hurricanes, they usually ramp up before landfall, because landfall is death for a hurricane. It doesn't want to pop up on land. It's a lot of energy that it takes. It's a lot of death sentence for a hurricane. They don't want to go on land, they want to avoid land. I'm not trying to say it's a real thing. It's an engine, it's a system. It doesn't want to be shut down. You understand? So it moves, bypasses land as far south as it can around Jamaica and reforms its eye wall. just so it has a better chance at directing into the Gulf of Mexico as far all the way into Texas. It's a ridiculous storm. Absolute ridiculous storm. And the fact that it'll be the 11th and we'll still be talking about this storm, different reasons, but we can still see the remnants. Ramps up pretty quickly after it makes a complete landfall in Texas, and it's just like it's just ripped out into the northeast. Yeah, storm, that's a pretty big storm. So Michigan, Ohio Valley is going to see some storms. There we go. A couple of inches to West Michigan, they always get all the fun stuff. It looks like the Central Valley is going to get a lot of the rain too. This is going to just flood over everything. Precipitable water. Yeah, it's going to drop a lot of water over the Great Lakes area, the region, the Ohio Valley region. You mark my words, this is going to be a robust storm. Wow. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about the Ohio Valley, but this storm is going right over that region. Although it shows West Michigan getting the most of it because the storm gets cut off because of the lake. The lake cuts off the storm, and West Michigan gets a lot of the remnants of this Hurricane Beryl. Slow it down a little bit. Yeah, after it's already been formed, it's just a matter of time that something dominates this storm and it takes a lake that leaves partial of the storm. As it tries to keep itself together, but it's going to fall apart over Michigan. Michigan kills storms. I'll tell you something about Michigan. It really does a number on a storm. These lakes, depending on their temperature and turbidity, can really do a knockout punch to a big storm like this. Even though that the storm is defeated, I will say that it looks like there's going to be a lot of rain as far as West Michigan, North Traverse City, to Metro Detroit, to Ohio Valley, all the way to Chicago. It's a big storm, and it has a lot of promise to barrel all the way from South Texas to Michigan in just a few days. The storm is still there, okay? I don't know about lightning. There we go. Directly over the Metro Detroit. So I know it's not a hurricane. I won't say that. Although it's fun. It's not a hurricane over Michigan, but it's still a pretty good storm. And it's going to get torn apart by these Great Lakes, especially Lake Erie. Show this one more time. Yes. Everything to the north of this is going to get a couple of inches as it progresses. This is the threat's not over from Hurricane Beryl. I really can't explain just how quickly this storm is moving from here to here in a very rapid sense. So much of the storm is left over on West Michigan, in West Michigan. West Michigan should prepare themselves for pretty good flooding. 2 to 3 inches of water, especially in Michigan. That's enough to float your car. In 2 inches of water in a freeway, the floods are too much for the pumps. It's happened before in Michigan, and if it were to happen again in Michigan anytime soon, it would be here. Especially Ohio River Valley. It's a lot. This storm is pretty incredible. No matter how else I look at it, in this tropical storm that's going to be tropical storm after it has landfall, it's still going to shred through all that atmospheric precipitation. So it might be picking up a lot more of an arsenal to let loose as it hits Midwest. Michigan is probably going to see a huge amount of flooding because that's where it looks like it's going to get unzipped. And it's just going to flood. Not flood, but I don't know what else to call it because it's going to be like so much precipitation that falls in at one point at one time. It's going to be a flooding event in the Midwest. I won't say I guarantee it, but be prepared for it if you're in the Midwest, especially in the area where the storm is going to call it quits because it gets torn apart by the lakes.
A hurricane rips through the Caribbean, causing devastation, but alarm too among climate scientists. It is the fiercest and earliest ever Atlantic storm, a direct result of global warming, experts say. Why is this storm causing so much concern globally? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. A storm like no other. That's how Hurricane Beryl is being described as it batters the Caribbean. It's left devastation and destruction in its wake, and more is expected. Warnings about climate change and global warming are reported daily in media right around the world, but this storm's timing, its speed and its intensity is causing concern among scientists globally. We'll find out more about both the local and the wider impact of Hurricane Beryl later in the programme with our guests. And we'll take a closer look at the science behind this particular storm with our senior meteorologist, Rob McElwee. But first, let's have this report from Kulsum Sharif.
Hurricane Beryl is breaking records as it tears to the Caribbean. It made landfall on Grenada's Carriacou Island on Monday, flattening about 90% of homes. It's the strongest storm to hit the southeastern Caribbean in 2 decades.
To see this
90%
level
of
of
homes.
destruction, it is almost Armageddon-like, almost total damage or destruction of all buildings, whether they be public buildings, homes, or other private facilities. There is almost complete destruction of the electrical grid system in Carriacou. The entire communication system is completely destroyed.
Some people who lost their homes on Union Island, a tiny crop in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines archipelago, arrived in the Jamaican capital with tales of what it was like in the middle of the storm.
I survived in my tided area because the tap cast. It was a hard 4 hours battling.
You know, you make a movie where you just have a lot of devastation. That is how you don't like it. It's in a mess.
On Tuesday, Beryl weakened to a Category 4 storm but remained destructive. Across the region, from the Dominican Republic to Cancun in Mexico, people rushed to stock up and take shelter. In Venezuela, the storm brought heavy rains to the northern state of Sucre. A river burst its banks, triggering floods. Several people have died or been reported missing.
Hay 8,000 casas afectadas.
There are 8,000 houses with various levels of damage. We've already responded. Civil protection teams are working with the Army to document the damage. They told me at least 400 houses are completely lost.
Beryl is the first hurricane of the Atlantic season and the earliest storm on record to be classified as the maximum Category 5. National Weather Service planes are trying to gather data to understand more about Beryl's intensity and structure. Scientists cite man-made climate change for the storm's rapid strengthening, and there are warnings of an extraordinary season ahead. Kulsum Sharif, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
So, what is the science behind this storm and what might just happen next? To explain, here's our senior meteorologist, Rob McKelvey.
Beryl is a noteworthy major hurricane. You already know this much. Now, from the point of view of what it looks like from space, it's huge. It goes from the coast of Venezuela right up beyond Barbados and St. Lucia, both of which found the effects quite unpleasant, but the devastation was near the eye. It's a beautiful eye near Grenada. Now, in September, we'd think this is a major hurricane, happens every 20 years or so, and not surprising. But it's July, and there's the worry. It's a unique storm. It formed in June, became in 24 hours a Category 4 hurricane. That's never happened before. And there's the earliest Category 5 in July with winds well in excess of 250 kilometres per hour. These are how they're categorised. It's the winds just around the inside of the eye, the strongest winds. There isn't a Category 6, so Category 5 will just go up and up as the storms get worse. Now, Beryl, of course, is fed like every tropical storm by the warmth of the surface water. And it is warmer in the Atlantic and the Caribbean by 2 or 3 degrees above the long-term averages. This isn't going to change. It might even get worse, might get warmer still. So you're inserting more energy for every storm that forms. Hence, Beryl, early and major. And Beryl's still going, barreling through the Caribbean, which is warmer than normal, past Jamaica, still as a Category 4 storm, slowly losing energy as it goes further west, admittedly. But what does this say for our season? Well, in fact, the season was already forecast to be rather worse than normal. Could have up to 25 named storms, well above the average. Maybe 7 major hurricanes, that's Category 3 or above. The average is 3. We've had 1 already. And the drivers are, as you know, the warmer water, which is everywhere, but certainly in the hurricane paths, and La Nina, which is the pendulum swing, almost the opposite of El Nino. It just adds more impetus, so the conditions are ripe for a very nasty season, and you've seen how it started.
All right, let's take this on. We can bring in our guest now in Orlando, in Florida. It's Daniel Guilford. He's a meteorologist and atmospheric scientist who focuses on how climate change affects hurricanes, heat, and local communities. Ria Marie Pierre is in Bridgetown in Barbados, which has just been battered indeed by Hurricane Beryl. And she's the Caribbean delegation spokesperson for the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies and takes the technical lead on evolving crises and disasters. And Yeb Sanyora is in Manila. He's the Southeast Asia Executive Director of Greenpeace and a former climate negotiator for the Philippines government. A warm welcome to all of you. Let's go straight to the region first of all. Rea Maria Pierre, you are deploying Red Cross personnel to get in and try and help with this catastrophic situation. What are your eyewitnesses saying about the severity of this hurricane?
So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all your viewers. I'm based here in Barbados, in Bridgetown, and I weathered the storm with the Barbadian population on Sunday into Monday morning. Here in Bridgetown, in Barbados, the devastation on the south coast in particular was immense. I mean, over 200 fishing vessels have been destroyed, over 20 boats sank. There was major damage to the port of Bridgetown. And then we also had damage to the fisheries industry. But even that synopsis pales in comparison to what we're seeing in Grenada. We have Red Cross staff and volunteers stationed in Grenada. And I mean, to live through that, the devastation is immense. As you saw earlier on in the program, Carriacou has been completely emaciated. 98% of an island is gone. The communications on Carriacou are still down. People are still trying to make contact with their friends and their families. Every building has not gone untouched. I mean, that's just two. Immense. We have 8 countries that are in the path of Beryl program. Carriacou. It's amazing to think about the destruction and the devastation in Union Island and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The communications are still down. The airport has been lost. Schools, churches, the main hospital, all destroyed. And it's keeping going. As we speak, Hurricane Beryl will be impacting Jamaica.
And the point is, Ria, what we must absolutely emphasize here is that just how early this has come in the season, in what is predicted to be a very severe hurricane season.
I mean, it's July. The main part of the hurricane season, typically in the Caribbean, is around September into November and maybe the beginning of October. That's quite a ways away. We have more barrels to look forward to if we really take a look at the forecast. And we have to think about what these constant impacts on the region are having. It's the first storm of the season, and it has gone through 8 countries, projected to go through 8 countries so far. Is this really what we need to expect for the next few months in the region?
Okay, well, let's ask that question now to Daniel Guilford. Daniel, you grew up on the Florida coast, I understand, not so far from the Caribbean. You grew up observing it, big storms barreling in. As a climate scientist now, you also have deep knowledge of the climate systems. And now we have, as Ria was just saying, the earliest Category 5 hurricane ever. How surprised are you at this, and how concerned are you for the season ahead?
Yeah, well, hurricanes are kind of like giant heat engines. They take energy from the ocean's surface, kind of like what Rob mentioned earlier, and they take it as fuel, convert it into wind speed. And so what we're seeing out there in the Atlantic right now are very warm sea surface temperatures, unseasonably warm. As you mentioned earlier, these conditions are kind of like what you would expect in September. And so this hurricane Beryl that is moving through is really seeing conditions that are unlike anything we've ever seen before. This unprecedented toll on the storm is having unprecedented impacts. And we are quite concerned. You know, it is only just July and we're seeing September-like impacts. So what does this mean for the rest of the season? Certainly the sea surface temperatures out there are remaining warm as long as African waves, these sort of disturbances in the atmosphere keep rolling off the African coast. We're going to have those warm waters, and there's plenty of fuel available for these storms to sort of develop and then begin to grow. So we are certainly concerned that, in line with many of the predictions out of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and other groups that have made predictions about the season, that it will be an extremely active one, and that this is probably not the end of the 2024 hurricane season. It's actually just the beginning. So we are concerned about what these impacts are, and we just are very cognizant that if you're along one of the coastlines in the Caribbean or the Gulf or even the eastern seaboard of the United States, this is going to be a time where you need to pay careful attention to what's happening in the tropics.
Daniel, just take this on a little bit further. You say that the warming ocean is a driver of these hurricanes. Why is it that warmer ocean temperatures fuel hurricanes and big storms and cyclones?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So a hurricane is almost like the engine in your car. As you push down the accelerator, fuel comes into your engine and starts to make it turn and speed up. And a hurricane is very similar. It needs some sort of fuel source. And on our planet, that fuel source is the warm ocean temperatures. We're seeing warm ocean temperatures that are quite a bit warmer than we would have seen this time of year. In past years, something like 2 degrees Celsius warmer, and this can have big impacts on these hurricanes because you add more fuel to them, they can spin faster and faster. They have that opportunity to grow into the real monsters like the Hurricane Beryl that we're seeing right now. And so that fuel source is sticking around. Those warm ocean temperatures aren't going anywhere this season. And so we expect these hurricanes, as they begin to develop in this area, they can see that fuel source, they can take advantage of it, take that potential energy that is stored in the ocean and convert it into kinetic energy in the form of winds that can really provide a lot of the damages that we're seeing right now in the region. And so as we think about what's going to be happening going forward, a lot of this heat, as Rob mentioned, is here to stay. Climate change has sort of trapped more energy in the Earth's atmosphere. That energy eventually gets down into the ocean surface, which then provides a lot of warmth for these storms to be able to fuel up with. So this is something that is a major concern for us.
And it is climate change.
With human
Sorry to jump in there, Daniel.
It's
climate change is being fueled by fossil fuel emissions, creating a kind of blanket around the Earth. Yeb Sanya, so what's being experienced in the Caribbean now is being experienced right around the world. Very familiar scene, of course, in the Philippines where you are. What are your thoughts about what we're seeing in the Caribbean in the context of the worsening effects of climate change, especially in the Philippines?
Yes, just watching the news coverage and listening to Rhea right now is certainly reminiscent of the series of devastating storms that we've seen for the past many years. And certainly the one that hit my hometown in Tacloban City, Super Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, and Super Typhoon Rai just 3 years ago, which indicates for us, most of these typhoons have become more destructive and carrying so much intensity. And it aligns with what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is saying around the more frequency of Category 3 to 5 tropical storms. And that's very worrying, and I can only imagine the suffering that's happening in the Caribbean right now. I've seen it with my own eyes here where we live, and I can only really sympathize and pray for the best for those who are still struggling to pick up the pieces and racing against time to save lives and homes.
Rhea, what are the global discussions around climate change in relation to hurricanes like this? Are the voices of those countries, like those in the Caribbean and indeed in the Philippines and the Pacific, are those countries in the crosshairs of climate crises like these, are those voices being heard?
I think situations like this force Caribbean voices to be heard. How many more barrels are we going to have to live through? We have gone through Hurricane Maria and Irma in 2017. We had Hurricane Dorian in 2019. And now we're here again with Hurricane Beryl as the strongest hurricane to hit the region in 20 years, this early on. It forces the conversation. We are at the forefront of the climate crisis. We're no longer at the cusp of the climate crisis. We are living it, breathing it, experiencing it every single day. Our lives, our livelihoods are being impacted. I mean, how do we quantify some of the damage that we've seen? How do we quantify 98% of an island being destroyed? And it's not only one, it's more than one. We've seen it in Carriacou, we're seeing it in St. Vincent, the impacts in Barbados, in St. Lucia, in Jamaica, in Dominica, in Trinidad and Tobago. The list goes on. How long does the list have to grow before we take action and before we really start to listen to the voices of people who are at the forefront of this climate crisis? We need to have more spaces for our voices to be amplified and our voices to be heard, because how long are we expected to suffer the consequences of the climate crisis when we only contribute less than 10% to global carbon emissions?
Yeah, over to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we've faced in terms of finding lasting solutions to the climate crisis is obviously the fossil fuel industry that's at the core of this crisis. And the slowness by which the international community and nations take serious, ambitious action to avert this crisis. What we're seeing right now are examples of what will continue to happen in the future if we do not act urgently on this crisis. And what we have seen as a very difficult in these international negotiations is of course the vested interest that lie behind this big issue. I would also want to mention that the tricky part about storms when we talk about the climate crisis, it's only been more recent that the scientific community has made it very categorical that climate change is driving more intense storms. And this is pretty recent. So that's why the science of attribution, being able to push the political boundaries around climate action, has not been seen in recent times. And I think all of these climate extremes that are happening all over the world right now, not just storms, but also heat waves, should compel leaders to take action.
Daniel, the thing is, you see, you have all these climate extremes going on, like Hurricane Beryl, but meanwhile, developed nations continue to subsidize fossil fuels to the tune of trillions of dollars a year. There's no real incentive for big oil and big gas to ease production. But if we continue to warm our planet in the way that we are doing, what does it mean for these weather events that are already reaching extremes?
Yeah, the climate system is going to respond in turn, right? More fossil fuels will mean that the temperature of the planet will continue to rise. And as the temperature of the planet rises, these impacts, like we're seeing extreme heat, hurricanes like Hurricane Beryl, which is being impacted already right now by climate change, will continue to be impacted. Climate change is here right now. It is impacting us in real ways. Real lives are being affected by these storms. So it is critical that we come together and work towards solutions to sort of solve the climate change problem that we are all collectively, the world, dealing with. And these things are expected to not change. We are going to have this heat with us for a long time. So in addition to mitigating our impacts, we're also going to have to adapt and change the way we live our lives to protect ourselves from the worst of impacts. So it's really important that we continue to have conversations with anyone and everyone who will listen, that climate change is here, it's happening, and we need to do everything we can to reduce its impact.
But Daniel, we've been having those conversations for 20 years and more, going back in time, and action is not happening fast enough.
That's right. We need to make immediate changes right now. And one of the challenges, I think, is sometimes climate change can be a little abstract. It's far away. Maybe it's in somewhere else. But climate change we can see through Hurricane Beryl, the extreme heat waves, the extreme flooding we've been seeing around the world. It is happening right now. It's no longer an abstract thing. As was just mentioned, we now have the science to point to particular events and say, this was made worse by climate change, or this intense event was made more likely because of climate change. The science supports that. And so what we need to really be doing is having our policy support solutions towards reducing our climate emissions and the climate impacts, hopefully, going forward.
We're looking at pictures just a second ago of the Paris Agreement crossing the line back in 2015, which is almost 10 years ago. Ria, there's been a raft of elections across the world this year, yet the climate crisis has hardly been on the agenda. Not in the UK, not in the United States. Governments clearly believe it's not a vote winner.
At the end of the day, it is a hot topic issue. I think people necessarily don't want to, as we say, put their head on a block for what is being described, as Daniel just said, as abstract thoughts. But it's not abstract thoughts. We are living it every day. It's a reality, and we need to focus on the reality. We need to focus on accountability, because the climate crisis was not started by small island developing states, but we need to ensure that we protect the most vulnerable in our communities who are at the forefront of this climate crisis. We need to maybe stop being a little so politically correct about it. And we actually need, as you said, the conversation has been going on for 20 years. The time to take action was not now, it was then.
What do you mean by not being so politically correct?
From the standpoint of we need to tackle the issues at hand, and we need to tackle the issues that are in front of us. We need to take the wool over our eyes off. We need to bring, like spaces like this do, bring a lot more awareness and clarity and vision to what is happening in the countries that are being affected by climate change, and put a human element to it, because it's the human element that suffers the most. And it's the human element that needs the support, as our colleague said, in terms of the policies and making the policies a reality. Because if we continue to sit on our hands, we're going to continue to have more barrels, we're going to continue to have more Dorians, we're going to continue to have more supercells.
Okay.
And we really need to start putting the human agenda at the forefront and the humanitarian agenda at the forefront, and to protect the lives and livelihoods of people who are routinely impacted every single season by these supercells.
Ria, I'm going to move on because we've only got 3 or 4 minutes left, and I want to come to both of our other guests. First of all, you mentioned the process. How do we make that more meaningful? And the question is, isn't the mechanism itself broken? The UN framework itself is just not working.
There are certain indications that we need to put pressure on the international process. It is, I would agree with you, a little bit broken, but it's our best option right now in terms of getting all countries to contribute towards meaningful solutions to the climate crisis. I would say every politician who doesn't talk about climate change is on the wrong side of history, and we will keep exposing these world leaders who are not addressing and confronting this crisis like they should as a crisis.
Daniel, despite it all, renewable energy is gaining ground. There is a growing demand, especially from youth movements around the world, for change. It's not too late, is it?
It's not too late. You know, that the fact that we're dealing with Beryl says that some impacts are already with us, but there's sort of a range of what impacts we could be seeing in the future. And if we reduce our fossil fuel emissions, our greenhouse gas emissions right now, we can sort of mitigate and reduce those impacts that we're going to be seeing going forward. And this is really good evidence. What's happening with Beryl right now is really good evidence that the climate system is already responding to the decisions we make. So that's actually kind of an interesting story, because it says that the decisions we make right now will affect going forward. And so it is critical that this moment we have these conversations, we continue to connect what we see happening in the real world to the decisions we are making about how we emit things, how we produce our energy. And it's critical that we think about that in this moment and make the decisions going forward that will protect both ourselves and future generations.
Yeah, but you have worked on both sides of the fence, from negotiating to activism. At this point in time, where do you find hope? Do you truly believe that we will get out of this?
Well, there are days when we confront hurricanes like Hurricane Beryl, and it leaves you just really totally flustered and cynical. But we have to wake up each morning with hope, and hope is stronger than fear. And therefore, we should just keep believing that another world is possible, that we can make this happen. We can make the just energy transition possible in our generation, and create a world that is just, that is safe, and that is meaningfully equitable for everybody. This is about justice. This is about fairness. Those who are suffering from the most adverse impacts of the climate crisis are those who contributed the least to this problem. And therefore, if we have any faith in humanity, it's the faith in humanity that we will be able to find justice and resolve this crisis once and for all.
Let's finish in the region. Ria, at this difficult point in time for the Caribbean, it must be hard to find any optimism at all, isn't it? What are you thinking about the years ahead and how we tackle this crisis?
Well, I have to agree with what Ian said. We can't We can't allow ourselves to think like that. We have to be optimistic about the future. We have to work with the organizations like the Red Cross to support community development and community building efforts at that level, because the communities are our very first responders. So we need to invest in community resilience building and community preparedness so that we know what to do and we know how to adapt, and we're able to sort of chart a course forward for the future. We need to understand our risks and our vulnerabilities a lot better so that we are able to plan and prepare for them. And we have to do that with an open mind and with an open spirit to be able to accept the hope that's going forward. Because in the Caribbean, we are refusing to accept that this is going to be the be-all and end-all for us. We need to be able to be more resilient, and in order to do that, we have to have a positive outlook on the future.
All right. As they say, when, if not now, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks to our guests, Daniel Guilford, Ria Marie Pierre, and Nazareth Yevsano. Thank you very much. And thank you too for watching. You can see our programs again at any time by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And to continue the conversation, just go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com.
95% of an island wiped out, 90% of homes destroyed. This thing is coming on land, bringing upon it lots of wind and lots of rain. Pinelands fire swells to 450 acres, forces evacuation of campground and trails. This is in Wharton State Forest. This is New Jersey. Wisconsin City evacuated after Manawa Dam breached amid heavy rainfall. Another earthen dam breach. Second in Wisconsin in a week. Thunderstorms on Friday dumped more than 5.5 inches of rain on Manawas, Wisconsin, causing floodwaters to burst through a levee, officials said. Floodwaters burst through a levee in Wisconsin City during severe thunderstorms on Friday, forcing evacuations and road closures, officials said. A small cluster of thunderstorms sat over Manawa and the surrounding area Friday morning, dumping more than 5.5 inches over the course of about 4 hours, Kurt Goldenberg said. So what we've been saying is that you're going to have rainstorms that are worse, that are more extreme, far more a deluge. Kurt Goldenberg, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Green Bay, told the Washington Post. The rainfall caused flash flooding, and once emergency crews noticed the ground near the Manawa Dam eroding, officials started evacuating residents downstream, sheltering them in the city's Masonic Center and high school. They also evacuated an assisted living facility to a veterans home in King, some 20 miles away. Around 12:30 p.m., the engorged Little Wolf River tops the Manawa Dam, Goldberg said. Video from WGBA appears to show the river pouring through a broken levee near the dam as the earth continues to crumble into the floodwaters. No one was injured or killed. Manawa Fire Chief Still a lot left to do in flood recovery process. Little Wolf River.
And we begin with some breaking news this afternoon.
A dangerous situation in Wapaka County tonight. Heavy rains lead to a flood emergency in Manawa, causing the dam to fail.
Rainwater quickly caused the Little Wolf River to swell. Take a look at this drone video. The privately owned dam in Manawa quickly became overrun with water. It was clear quick by the dam operators late this morning that there would be an imminent failure. It did prompt urgent evacuations downstream. An area right next to the dam ended up washing away around 2 this afternoon. Right now, there's no reports of any injuries downstream. Now, this is what the dam looked like right before it failed. You can see lots of water raging through that dam. Authorities did inspect the downstream bridges in town. They are believed to be fine. These police chiefs spoke on the situation late this afternoon.
It's still an active situation. I think the worst of it is over, so now we're just going to start assessing things and seeing where we go from there.
More assessments on the dam and the bridges will take place in the coming days.
The rain and the flooding also causing evacuations at a campground just downstream of the dam. People appeared stranded for a while as they quickly pulled up. The water also causing an emergency situation at the Midwestern Rodeo grounds in town. It was supposed to be a fun-filled weekend, but organizers decided to cancel this weekend's rodeo and the parade.
People in Manawa are flocking to this dam Friday evening to see the damage brought on by heavy rain. I'm Perry Apostolakos, and I spoke with some onlookers about what they experienced during the flooding that followed.
A flash flood warning was issued Friday in Manawa when heavy rain caused the land surrounding the dam to collapse. 2 evacuation areas were set up for people asked to evacuate. They closed around 6:30 p.m. Natasha Knapp has lived in Manawa for 30 years. She stopped by the dam Friday night. She says the place where so many people would go to fish is now gone.
It is just heartbreaking and insane. Everybody will pull together. This is a great community, and just stay Manawa strong together.
Brady Dahlman grew up in Manawa. He says the basement of his parents' house was flooded by more than a foot of water on Friday, and something his grandmother said surprised him.
She's 90, and she's never seen anything like this in 90 years. So seeing that and hearing that, it's pretty crazy.
The city has now canceled its rodeo parade, originally scheduled for Saturday.
If people are in need of services because of flood damage, the city asks that you call 211. In Manawa, Perry Apostolaco.
What's the other dam? The worst should be over for this dam, at least for now. I thank you for joining me here. If you haven't already, please like the stream, subscribe to the channel. It helps me immensely and keeps me motivated in doing videos related to climate change like this. If you haven't seen already, I have a Patreon account. It is in the description of this video. I would greatly appreciate it if you would at least click the free membership here. Thank you so much. Now we continue. Climate change is jeopardizing loons, a beloved symbol of Northwoods. Here's why. Over the past 3 decades, there has been a steep decline in the ability of loons to produce chicks, according to the Loon Project's 2020 study. You can't step into a northern Wisconsin gift shop without seeing the dark red eyes and black and white spotted backs of loons stamped on postcards, magnets, and t-shirts. The common loon is a symbol of the Northwoods, its mournful call evoking images of worn summer days away from the hustle of daily life. But the real-life birds may be in jeopardy, according to a recent study. Wisconsin's loon population has dropped 22% over the past 3 decades. The study shows that the declines are likely due to lakes becoming less clear from climate change and land use. Walter Piper, a behavioral ecologist at Chapman University in Orange, California, and an author on the study, says the reproductive success or the ability of a loon to have a chick that lives to have its own offspring is down in Wisconsin. It's only a matter of time until there are steeper declines, Piper said. I'm on pins and needles every year, he said. Here's how climate change and land use are affecting the treasured Northwoods bird. Loons need cold, clean water with natural shorelines. Common loons breed in freshwater lakes from Alaska across much of Canada, including parts of a number of other U.S. states, like Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan, which are the southern tip of the range. Loons overwinter on the Atlantic and Pacific coasts, and then return to freshwater lakes in the Great Lakes, Northwoods, to breed and raise their young. The bird needs clean, cold waters, lakes to nest, said Tim Presby, Wisconsin Conservation Manager at Abaddon Great Lakes. Loons are visual hunters and rely on their underwater eyesight to dive and catch fish, he said. Loons also need natural shorelines close to water to nest, Presby said. That's because loons have webbed feet that are more like flippers, he said, so they can't walk around on land like the other birds can. Younger and older loon chicks are dying at alarming rates. Piper and other scientists working on the Loon Project started monitoring loon breeding pairs in 1993. In total, they track 110 breeding pairs in Oneida, Lincoln, and Vilas counties. Piper's previous work with the project shows that life for loon chicks in northern Wisconsin is becoming harder. Over the past 3 decades, there has been a steep decline in the ability of loons to produce chicks, according to their 2020 study. Both young and older chicks are dying at higher rates than recorded earlier. One of the most dramatic declines is the survival of young loons that have not yet started to breed, known as floaters. In 1990, about half the floaters that migrated to the coast for the winter would return to northern Wisconsin in the summer to look for territory, Piper said, referring to the time as the Roaring 90s. Now only 16% return, he said. Loons typically produce one brood of chicks per year with 1 or 2 eggs, but Piper said that broods with 2 chicks are becoming rare, and the chicks that do survive are 11% lighter on average than they were 30 years ago, putting their survival at risk. Climate change causes heavier rains, causing more sediment to wash into the rivers and lakes, causing them to become less clear, as well as different pollutions. So the loon chicks are getting lighter. They're having less chance of breeding. It's a slow bird. It takes a while for their breeding cycles to complete, especially for its young to hunt successfully still. Sharks could be killed off by climate change after a catastrophic decrease in hatchings. Scientists say ocean warming and acidification are caused by greater concentrations of carbon dioxide dissolving into marine environments, resulting in rising water temperatures and falling pH levels, which means it's more acidic. I'm pretty sure that's AI art generated there. Even though it says Getty Images, it looks AI generated. Scientists say that ocean warming and acidification are caused by greater concentrations of carbon dioxide dissolving into marine environments, resulting in rising water temperatures and falling pH levels. Lead researcher Naomi Cowlin said the embryos of egg-laying species are especially sensitive to environmental conditions. The hatching success of embryos is a crucial factor for population dynamics. And 11%. Researchers noted that the surviving 11% did not exhibit the typical growth pattern of the other sharks, which have contributed to the resistance to climate change. So again, just like the loons, the sharks that are lighter, they are having a harder time breeding, successfully having chicks that eventually go and breed themselves, continuing the I thank you for your time. I appreciate your viewership. I will be calling a stream here. I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We'll have so much to get into, but it is tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. will be another day. Please join me. As always, thank you. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Please take care.